There's someone in the water! Call 911!
The scream tore through the pre-dawn stillness of Oceanic Kingdom, Florida, just after sunrise. Security guards, responding to the chilling cry, rushed to the edge of the massive orca habitat. What they found instantly silenced them. Floating motionless, on the back of a colossal killer whale, a man, naked, lifeless, and the orca beneath him, a formidable bull named Neptune, drifted in slow, deliberate circles as if nothing had happened. How did a man end up dead, naked, on the back of a killer whale inside a high-security marine park? Was it a tragic accident, a desperate act of suicide, or something far more disturbing? Oceanic Kingdom, Florida, July 12, 1999, 7 a.m. The whale Neptune, one of the largest orcas ever held in captivity, already with a shadowed past. The man, 29-year-old Ethan Reed, a restless wanderer with profound spiritual beliefs who had somehow slipped into the park undetected after closing hours. He wasn't a trainer. He had no legitimate reason to be in that tank. And yet, by morning, his body was covered in bite marks, contusions, and strangely, his clothes were found folded neatly nearby. This is the terrifying story of Ethan Reed and the orca that may have claimed his life. Welcome to Animal Chronicles. If you're passionate about real-life animal encounter stories that go beyond the headlines, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and share it with others who care about uncovering the truth behind the tragedy. Now let's look deeper into this unfolding mystery. Ethan Reed was born in 1970 and grew up in Coral Coast, Florida, a tranquil seaside town known more for its serene beaches and gentle breezes than the shocking headlines it would one day inspire. At 29 years old, Ethan wasn't the kind of person who fit neatly into societal norms. Friends, though few and far between, described him as quiet, eccentric even, but never dangerous. He navigated life with a profound stillness, seemingly detached from the clamor of modern society. Ethan wasn't a criminal, he wasn't violent, but he was undeniably different. He was known to travel alone, often vanishing for days with only a worn backpack and a leather-bound journal. Those who encountered him noted his frequent discussions about finding a deeper meaning in life, his steadfast belief in the spiritual connection between humans and animals, the radical idea that everything in nature possessed a voice, a soul, a profound lesson to impart. He largely kept to himself, avoiding technology, and briefly joined various spiritual communes over the years. Many who met him recalled his deep fascination with freedom, both human and animal. But above all, Ethan harbored an unwavering obsession with marine life. He would often speak of whales, especially orcas. He believed they were ancient, misunderstood beings that could teach humanity something profound about existence, if only we were willing to listen. By most accounts, he wasn't steadily employed, often couch surfing, hitchhiking, sometimes disappearing across state lines without a word. He was soft-spoken, polite, yet always carried an undeniable air of mystery. Some described him as mentally fragile. Others simply saw him as someone deeply introspective, perhaps too much so. In the weeks leading up to July 1999, Ethan had made his way to Orlando, Florida. No one truly knew why, not exactly. He left no note, made no calls to family or friends. But according to police reports and Oceanic Kingdom's guest records, Ethan Reed entered the park during normal business hours on July 11th, just like any other tourist. At first glance, he blended seamlessly with the summer crowds. Just another face beneath the swaying palm trees, waiting in line for rides, watching the majestic orca shows. But Ethan had no intention of leaving. As the park approached its closing hours that evening, the vibrant energy slowly waned. Families filtered toward the exits, vendors shuttered their kiosks, and security made their final rounds, gently ushering the last few stragglers out through the turnstiles. But Ethan never left. Somehow, without detection, he managed to slip away from the exiting throngs. Investigators later speculated he may have hidden in a restroom near Olympus Coliseum, the park's massive open-air arena reserved for its signature orca performances. Another theory suggests he concealed himself in a storage area behind the stage, a labyrinth of props and equipment. But one thing is certain, when the lights went dark across Oceanic Kingdom that night, Ethan Reed was still inside. What happened next is pieced together only from grim forensics, scattered circumstantial evidence, and a truly horrifying discovery. Sometime after the last employee had clocked out, and while security patrols had moved to the outer perimeter of the park, Ethan emerged from hiding. There were no signs of forced entry. No alarms were triggered. Oceanic Kingdom would later confirm that their orca habitats were not covered or sealed at night. From where Ethan stood at the edge of the stage, the towering wall of salt water just a few feet below offered a mesmerizing view. From his vantage point, he could discern the massive, slow-moving form of Neptune, gliding silently beneath the surface. At that time, Neptune was the largest orca in captivity, over 22 feet long, weighing more than 12,000 pounds. His distinctive black and white form was unmistakable. Yet in the profound stillness of the night, he moved like a ghost through the water. We don't know how long Ethan stood there, bathed in the dim ambient light, or whether he hesitated. What we do know, based on the precise position of his clothing, later recovered, neatly folded near the tank's edge, is that he removed his clothes voluntarily. Then he entered the water. There were no scratches, no signs of a struggle along the platform's edge. His footprints were found precisely at the pool's rim, leading into the dark depths. From that moment, whatever transpired between Ethan Reed and Neptune played out in complete silence, unseen by any cameras or human witnesses. Was Ethan truly hoping to swim with the orca, to connect with him spiritually, as he had so often detailed in his journals? Or did he, in a final desperate act of conviction, understand the immense danger and choose this as a profound act of surrender, a spiritual communion, or perhaps a final farewell? Suicide was never officially ruled out, but nothing about that night followed any expected script. At some point during the early hours of July 12th, Ethan Reed died in that tank. Whether it happened quickly or slowly remains unknown. Whether it was Neptune's aggression, a defensive reaction, or simply the overwhelming alien environment that led to his demise, these questions remain largely unanswered. But when morning finally arrived, the scene awaiting the Oceanic Kingdom staff would forever burn itself into the memory of every person who witnessed it. And with it, Oceanic Kingdom faced yet another reckoning it had desperately hoped would never come again. Tuesday, July 12, 1999, Oceanic Kingdom, Florida. 7 a.m. The sun had just begun its ascent over Central Florida. Trainers and staff members arrived for their morning routine, preparing for another busy day of shows, feedings, and park operations. Everything appeared normal until a senior trainer entered the Abyss Pool, the primary habitat housing the park's most infamous orca, Neptune. What they saw would stop them cold. Floating across the surface of the water was a human body, completely naked, draped across Neptune's immense back like a forgotten rag doll. The massive orca continued swimming, slow and steady, his towering dorsal fins silently slicing through the water. And with each deliberate pass around the tank, he carried the lifeless figure of a man. Staff immediately froze in shock. Some screamed, others sprinted to call for help. The 911 call was placed within moments. This was no longer just a routine morning check-in. This was a death scene. Emergency responders arrived shortly after. By then, Neptune had already been calmly corralled into a medical pool, a standard Oceanic Kingdom procedure for isolating an orca using a series of gates. But the damage was done. As paramedics and police approached the edge of the tank, they confirmed what staff already knew. The man was dead. His arms were draped limply over Neptune's back, his skin pale and waterlogged. The whale appeared eerily calm, as if unaware, or perhaps unfazed, by the grim cargo he carried. In a later official statement, Oceanic Kingdom staff described the moment with shocking clarity. The body was found on the back of the whale as it swam around the pool. The identity of the man was not immediately known. He carried no wallet, no identification, no phone. His clothing, however, had been discovered nearby, folded neatly, placed with an almost deliberate intention. It wasn't until later that day that fingerprints helped identify him as Ethan Reed, a man who, by all accounts, had walked into the park as a guest and simply never left. Authorities immediately launched a full-scale investigation. Oceanic Kingdom executives scrambled to contain the burgeoning media frenzy, and for the second time in Neptune's controversial life, Headlines would link his formidable name to human death. But this time, there were no trainers involved. No high-speed stunts, no cheering crowds. Just a man, a whale, and the terrible silence of night. What exactly had transpired in that vast, darkened tank? Was it an unprovoked attack? A tragic misunderstanding? Or had Ethan Reed deliberately placed himself in harm's way, perhaps even hoping to forge a connection with a creature that he believed the world had long misunderstood? As investigators would soon learn, the truth would prove to be just as murky as the water Ethan had entered. Later that same day, the body of Ethan Reed was transported to the Sunshine County Medical Examiner's office. An autopsy was ordered immediately. What it revealed was as disturbing as it was perplexing. The official cause of death was ruled as drowning. Remarkably, there were no defensive wounds, no fractures that would suggest a violent struggle before entering the water. However, the body did show signs of significant post-mortem trauma, bruises and abrasions across the torso and limbs. Most notably, there were distinct puncture wounds, consistent with the conical-shaped teeth of an orca. These marks, the examiner concluded, were likely inflicted after death. Ethan had likely already succumbed to drowning by the time Neptune mouthed or toyed with the body, a behavior workers have been known to observe in captive orcas, particularly when understimulated or stressed. Furthermore, there were no drugs or alcohol in Ethan's system. Toxicology came back clean. This detail added a shocking element to the mystery. Whatever compelled him to climb into that pool, he did so with full awareness. His clothing, found carefully folded on the ledge near the pool, suggested a kind of ritualistic act. No torn fabric, no evidence of panic or coercion. It was a deliberate, calculated step. Neptune, for his part, showed no signs of aggression when he was isolated that morning. According to Oceanic Kingdom's internal reports, he responded to cues and did not resist being moved into a medical pool. But in the days that followed, he was kept under close observation. Some theorized that Ethan had tried to bond with the whale. Others believed he simply catastrophically underestimated the animal's power. But there was no getting around the chilling reality. Neptune was not a trained pet. He was a massive apex predator held in confinement for nearly 2 decades, with a long history of psychological stress. To truly comprehend what happened to Ethan Reed, we must first understand who Neptune was. Neptune was not born in captivity. He was a wild orca, captured in 1985, violently torn from his family pod at just 2 years old, in the frigid waters off the coast of Norway. This was a practice now widely condemned. Helicopters and boats herding orcas into nets, calves brutally separated from their mothers, sold to marine parks across the globe. Neptune's first destination was Ocean Haven in British Columbia, Canada. There he was placed into a comparatively small enclosed tank alongside 2 older, dominant female orcas. He was younger, smaller, and constantly bullied by his tank mates. Forced to perform, punished for mistakes, and subjected to long, monotonous hours floating alone in dark underwater pens, his early life in captivity laid the groundwork for severe psychological damage, a profound trauma few fully understood at the time. Then in 1992, tragedy struck during a routine training session at Ocean Haven. A bright young marine biology intern named Kira Vance slipped and fell into the orca pool. What followed was absolute chaos. Witnesses reported the whales, 3 of them, including Neptune, pulled her under repeatedly. She struggled desperately to stay afloat, but never resurfaced. Ocean Haven quickly closed its doors after the tragedy, and not long after, Neptune was controversially sold to Oceanic Kingdom, Florida, where his immense size and powerful presence made him an incredibly valuable, albeit volatile, asset. At over 22 feet long and weighing more than 12,000 pounds, Neptune became the largest orca in captivity anywhere in the world. But his life did not improve at Oceanic Kingdom. He was kept isolated for most of the day. Trainers interacted with him sparingly due to his increasingly unpredictable nature. Unlike the park's more trusted whales, Neptune was never used in water work with humans. He performed tricks, yes, but trainers did not swim with him. And when he wasn't on display, he spent long, solitary hours in a bare medical pool with minimal stimulation. Over time, his behavior became noticeably more erratic. These were classic signs of what marine mammal experts now recognize as zoochosis, a severe psychological condition marked by repetitive motions, unprovoked aggression, and profound psychological breakdown, directly caused by extreme, prolonged confinement. Despite his volatile temperament, Neptune was primarily used for breeding purposes, fathering more than 20 calves during his time in captivity. But even as he contributed to Oceanic Kingdom's expansion of its captive orca population, he was never truly considered safe. The inherent danger was always there, lurking just beneath the surface. Just one mistake, one misstep, and the consequences could be fatal. And they were. Because Kira Vance wasn't the only person to lose her life in Neptune's presence, Ethan Reed would be next. And years later, there would be yet another victim. Neptune was not just an orca, he was a potent symbol of something far larger, the immense, destructive toll that captivity can exact upon a wild, highly intelligent, and inherently powerful creature. As one former trainer later stated, with heavy heart, this wasn't Neptune's first fatality, and tragically, it wouldn't be his last. The death of Ethan Reed sent immediate shockwaves through the media, the stunned public, and the entire marine park industry. The circumstances were so bizarre, so utterly unthinkable, that the story became national news overnight. Within weeks, Ethan's family filed a lawsuit against Oceanic Kingdom, accusing the park of gross negligence. According to their claim, Oceanic Kingdom failed to secure a facility that housed a known dangerous animal. They argued that Ethan should never have been able to remain in the park undetected, let alone access a restricted habitat with a 12,000-pound apex predator. Oceanic Kingdom, however, responded swiftly and firmly. Their legal defense stood on one primary claim: Ethan was a trespasser. They stated he had hidden deliberately after hours, circumvented multiple security barriers, and entered a clearly restricted area marked with no trespassing, danger, and do not enter signs. To them, the tragedy was not a failure of security, but a deliberate act by a troubled individual. Still, the controversy only deepened. The press latched onto every angle, and headlines began asking deeply uncomfortable questions. Why was Neptune still performing after being involved in a fatality years earlier? Why weren't more robust protections in place for humans and for the whales themselves? Animal welfare advocates reignited their protest with renewed fervor. Former trainers and marine mammal experts stepped forward, calling the conditions of captivity inhumane. Oceanic Kingdom, in response, released statements asserting their unwavering commitment to safety, science, and education. But they resolutely refused to pull Neptune from shows. Despite the fact that Ethan Reed became the second person to die in Neptune's presence, the magnificent yet dangerous whale remained a central attraction. Shows continued, crowds still cheered, and the orca, who had now been connected to 2 human deaths, swam beneath the surface, his towering dorsal fin breaking through the water like a ghost in the machine. The tragedy of Ethan Reed was more than just a legal battle and a PR nightmare. It became a symbol of a much deeper issue, one that questioned not just the actions of a single man or a single park, but the very ethics of keeping the ocean's most powerful predators in concrete tanks for human entertainment. Years later, Neptune's life changed in subtle but significant ways. After the tragic death of senior trainer Sarah Miller in 2010, his third associated human fatality, Neptune was permanently removed from all water work with trainers. He spent much of his remaining years in isolation, swimming slow, repetitive laps in a back medical pool, far away from the public eye. He became both a powerful symbol of controversy and the somber centerpiece of a growing global debate about orca captivity. Activists, scientists, and former trainers cited his harrowing story, along with Ethan Reed's, as undeniable proof of a fundamentally broken system. A system that transformed intelligent, social, emotionally complex animals into what some called ticking time bombs. Neptune died in 2017 at the estimated age of 36. By then, he had spent more than 3 decades in captivity, a lifespan often longer than many orcas in the wild, yet profoundly unnatural in its confinement. His legacy remains undeniably stained by tragedy. 3 human lives lost, countless headlines, and an industry forever changed. And yet, Ethan Reed remains one of the most enigmatic pieces of that legacy. A 29-year-old man from Coral Coast, Florida, seeking something beyond the ordinary, perhaps connection, perhaps understanding, who entered a high-security marine park, made his way past multiple barriers, and slipped into a pool with the most infamous orca on record. He didn't leave a note. He left only questions. Was it raw curiosity? Was it a profound delusion? Or was it a young man's final, desperate search for connection, met by the dark silence of the deep? Ethan Reed may have entered that tank looking for meaning, but what he found was a tragedy, one that still echoes today in documentaries, in courtrooms, and in the evolving public opinion about how we treat the wild creatures we claim to love. If this story moved you, consider learning more about marine mammal captivity and what you can do to support wildlife preservation and ethical treatment. And finally, if you found this video powerful, please like, subscribe, and share to help spread awareness. This is just one of many real stories that show the complicated and sometimes horrifying intersection of humans and the animals we cannot control. Until next time, thank you for watching.